Hello and welcome to My Body, My Power podcast, where we shine our light, claim our worth, and empower the next generation. I'm your host, Kristen Rubis, a heart-led entrepreneur, mentor, and the creator behind the My Body, My Power movement. Here, we uncover authenticity, celebrate self-expression, and create a life and career that lights up the world. Welcome, Goddess. Let's dive in. Hello, My Body, My Power friends. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm deeply grateful and honored to have an amazing, empowering conversation with Christina Ryan-Stoltz of the SHEskool. Welcome, Christina.
Hi.
We're so glad that you're here. So thank you again to our listeners. And we're going to get started. So please tell us about the amazing things and work that you're doing in the world and a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be with you and have this conversation. My work is really rooted in the body. I've been a body worker for 23 and a half years, and it's constantly evolving. Most of that, I was a massage therapist, and I loved massage therapy. I went to the professional training, and then I went back and got a master's certification in Bodywork. And it took so many certifications over the years, just constant continuing education. I love to learn and I love to just deepen my practice. But I kept finding that there was something really missing and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I kept kind of laughingly saying, am I going to have to create it myself? Because I'm not finding it. I would read the pamphlet of something or, the website of some certification and be like, maybe this is it. Well, simultaneously, what was happening was that I was a part of a board and I was part of a board of a director I was a part of a board of directors for a program, which we'll get into, in this interview. But in that, in my training, I kept going out and trying to learn ways to be supportive in my role with this board. And the same thing was happening where I was like, and it was completely separate. It wasn't body work, right? It was community work. And I was having the same experience of like, I would go to these conferences or I would go to these trainings specific to the work we're doing. And I'd come back, the board would fund it and approve it, all those things. And I would go and I'd come back and I was like, that's not it. Sorry. And the reason mostly was like alignment. I kept finding that like I would go to these trainings and it was like there was something that just wasn't aligning for me as like something I could really sink my teeth into deeply and feel like the lived experience of knowing for sure that this is helpful, like having the experience myself. And so then personally, I also was, in the midst of needing some deep healing. So I always think of it as a triangle. It's funny you were talking about a triangle, pre-interview, but I have this like trifecta of like the personal, the professional, but also the community work being more like a mix of both of those. And all three were in these sort of like yearnings that at the time I didn't see in any way connected, but were completely like, connected by my experience once I dropped into, and once I discovered for myself, came in to understand embodiment work, which initially started really as like a somatic exploration through personal healing, through community work, and through professional development. It started with the personal. It started because I needed it.
Yeah.
Answered all of those questions and has just continued to evolve from a very, what I say, it's not always this way, but somatics as a practice is a very white man study, right? It's a very much rooted in like this clinical approach, whereas embodiment is definitely, it continues to evolve my understanding, but it's also really the feminized version of living in your body. And embodiment, from my perspective, is like inhabiting yourself. Not, you can embody anything. You can embody the goddess. You can embody, whatever you want to embody. But for the purposes of the work that I do, both personally and professionally, is like inhabiting your full self and being able to bring that part of yourself, which requires that you dismantle a lot of other things. And let go of the conditioning that just happens naturally, but by being on the planet and living around others. But once you are able to kind of like untether yourself from all of the little cords that life puts on us, then you get to have this full expression of your authentic self. You get to inhabit your actual self. And that is like,
Beautiful.
that's the liberation. It's the, the places in our body. So, if we look at that triangle from a body worker's perspective, I kept finding, okay, it's great. I have built-in clients because they keep coming in with the shoulder blade issue. But what's actually happening there?
Yeah.
I didn't want to. There was a part of me, again, with that alignment that was like, I don't want to foster the codependence that comes from me knowing that as long as you have this shoulder blade issue, like what's in there, what's really in there. And so when
Beautiful.
you can drop into yourself to, unattach from the emotional aspect of what's being held there, that's where, that's the other part of it is like in my body work, I kept feeling like empowerment should not be coming from me. I don't think of myself as a healer, and I don't think of myself as empowering others. I believe personally that we heal ourselves and that we empower ourselves. And so it was really important to me that, okay, but if the most empowering aspect of body work is that you call and make the appointment and you pay for it, which is great, but it's like, then you leave it in my hands.
Yeah.
Part of the deal is that I need you to keep putting it in my hands in order for me to make it, and so it was just like, being this thing that felt like I want more for my people because I'm so invested in them, and I'm just so attached to my, my clients are like, they become family. The way that I operated my business for over half of the time was working with people. I wanted a relationship with their body. I wanted a relationship with them. And so I really only saw people that came at least once a month. I wasn't seeing people in the context of like, maybe I'll see you on your birthday, or maybe I'll see you every other year or in the summer when you come. I stopped focusing on those kinds of relationships because I really wanted this. But because of that sort of like research that I was doing on people's bodies, that's what I was finding is like, okay, why aren't we making progress? What else is here? And I just kept sensing that there was something deeper, and it is. And what it is that it's the person. It's the person's job to be able to, and of course they need guidance and support to get there usually. But then once they've got it, then they get to do that for themselves. They get to locate the emotional, what's been suppressed or accumulated over time, that's, it's like, over time, it just accumulates, every single thing that happens. And so I always had this theory that, I feel like I'm talking 100 miles an hour, but I always had this theory. I knew very well that the good stuff comes in and it lives its full life. It comes out in a smile. It comes out in a hug. It comes out in laughter. And that's what everything should do. That's what everything can do, and that we're designed for. But because of those societal, that conditioning or the role modeling that we're seeing or not seeing, which is to suppress, repress, and depress our emotions, we are not seeing how to have that full experience. And so they come in and then they lodge somewhere in the body and they stay there until they can be processed, and they have to be acknowledged in order to be processed. And so often, the work of body work is really just revisiting the same old physical thing and not dealing with the emotional part. And so you get a little bit there with some breathing, right? You can take a person there and we can focus on what's present on a somewhat superficial layer because of the relationship, right? Of the fact that we're not really developing the felt sense, which is what you need to be able to be present with yourself. And the felt sense comes from really experiencing what it's like on the inside of you without all of the rhetoric, without all of the dialogue. And so to really be with that, you've got to be outside of that relationship that comes from like body worker and you on the table, and therefore vulnerable, even if you trust the person, right? I have people I've seen for two decades. They definitely trust me. They would undress if I wanted, they would undress with me not leaving the room if I didn't hurry and leave the room because they're so comfortable. But there's still a layer that comes from the dynamic of that relationship that then leads when you're across, when you're like mano a mano and you're really just like, let's go there. And everything I do is trauma informed. And so it's also like, let's go there, but let's go there very gently, and let's go there without re-traumatizing you, because we can go to the body without going to here, without the story, because it's really the story that's holding the emotional charge, and the body is just like, here, I'm holding it. I've got you. And, the stories that we tell ourselves are like, oh, I can't handle it. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. Or, fill in the blank. However we communicate that with ourselves, it's the driver of how we feel about what's living inside of us. But when we actually ask the body, what do you need? What are you holding for me? What would you like me to know? A whole new world opens up, because the body has a lot to say. So that's what I'm doing in the world. And I do it in, a couple of ways. I work one-on-one with people. I also teach classes that are like kind of the way in the door. They help people understand that the deeper work is needed, because it very much like any body class that you go into, any movement class you go into, I would say specifically with mindful movement or yoga, you're going in and you're knowing that that's not about you. It is. It absolutely is, but it's not one-on-one with your teacher, right? Everybody in the room has to be accounted for it. And so the themes are generally what the teacher selects, and whether or not it pertains to you, you're in that class. Whereas the one-on-one work is very customized. And so I do that. I do group work. I also work with kids, nervous system education. I call it like re-education, repair and re-education, because we just don't know. We don't know that we co-regulate in the womb with our mothers. And from that point on, we're constantly co-regulating to the strongest energy in the room until we become sovereign. And then we get to be the holder of that energy. And then other people can co-regulate to us, which they may already be doing if we're in, chaos.
I got chills.
Yeah. And
That's
so
beautiful.
It's just a really powerful way of approaching the experience that we have as humans, because as humans, everyone's dancing around. It's like anything. You could pull anything out from what's happening in the world at any given moment and be like, how are we functioning? We're functioning, there's I can never remember, and I'm always like searching for it, but there is this Latin phrase. It's not memento mori, which is like, you will die, like remember you will die, but it's something about like the amnesia that we need in order to be able to function. We need it. It's necessary. But as we were again talking about pre-interview, it's like some people only exist in that place of like, they can't really tune in to what's happening on the micro or the macro. It's too much. And they might not even think they care. But it's really like, as human beings, we are biologically wired to care. And so it's a requirement to disconnect. And so we have to have these big things that keep us disconnected in order to address like the disconnect. We have to have the distractions, whether they're digital or they're substance or their movement or, all the ways that we distract ourselves. It really is because it's the only way for some people to bear life. And by bear life, I mean bearable. But being present with what is does not mean that all of those things that are horrible and awful go away. It just means, that you find a way to say yes, and yes, it's terrible, and I've got me. And that's a huge difference, right? That's the bridge to where we get to be like in the and, when we get to be with all of it, when we get to sit with it, when we learn that sitting with it is the only way of being in that alignment or in that integrity with ourselves, because we haven't abandoned ship, and we haven't abandoned ourselves. We're right in it. And sometimes that's really painful. And it's again, like the story here, instead of the story in the body, the mind will say, I cannot do this. So I will play video games, or I will smoke a joint, or I will, go for a run, instead of just being with ourselves. But the reality is like, it just puts it off. It just puts it off till a later time. Again, it accumulates, and it's that disconnect that continues over time to just erode that relationship that we have with ourselves. And so the work that I really, really feel like I'm doing is like reintroducing people to the way kids who haven't gone so far down the road yet, but don't have most adults around them aren't modeling this. So it's giving them something that they get to see is possible for themselves. And then, instead of unlearning, they're just not learning the things that the rest of us have. And then also with adults, it is that dismantling where they're really able to kind of let the noise get real quiet. But it's not getting quiet because we're distracting. It's getting quiet because we're listening. And we're really just like so zeroed in on the full presence of ourselves. And then from that place, I always think of this work when I very first started. Some of my deepest shadow work was honestly like being married, right? Being married is such shadow work and such mirror work. Oh my gosh, nothing like it. But in our work together, we were working with a counselor, and she was, it's so funny to me, but I was conditioned to believe that, being needy is the worst thing you can be. And so, this is so long ago, but I remember telling my therapist, because she was like, you need to, in order to really figure out what your shared values are, you have to figure out what your needs are. And I was like, I don't have needs. I'm good. And she's this like, I call her Saint Joanna, but she's like this like tough woman from New York City, and she's got a little bit of that accent, and she's like 5 foot tall and mighty. She just laughs. She cackle laughs at me for saying, I'm good, but I had this terror. I had such terror that I would be needy if I had needs, and I didn't understand. Right. And then now I'm the cackler because I'm like, oh, right. I'm a human being, and, we have needs, whether we have to meet them or, we're asking others to meet them.
Yeah.
We have them. And you have to get real aligned with yourself in order to be able to, it's like that, that tension comes from what we feel, but what the world shows is okay. And we're constantly outsourcing. We're constantly looking at the world for like how to, safety and belonging are the most important things in Maslow's hierarchy of need, but also in human life, we need safety and belonging more than we need anything else besides food and air and water, right? And it's so important that people will do crazy shit just to be able to have safety and have belonging. But they're emotionally outsourcing that because they believe that that safety and belonging has to come externally. And so there's nothing that's showing us that that is coming from within, or that it can come from within. And then it informs, and this really is my bigger point, is when I learned that I could have needs in my marriage, and the same with this work, is like, once your needs are met, then you get to serve, right? Once you are safe and you belong to yourself or to what you need to belong to in order to feel fulfilled, then you get to do the work. But you have to do the work internally first, because otherwise it is the people pleasing, it is the emotional outsourcing, and it's not sustainable. But then, like, I know you know this because you're an overflowing waterfall also. It's like, then you can serve because you are meeting those needs yourself. You are identifying what you need. You are letting those relationships slough off that need to, that aren't serving you or that are, energy drains. And all of those concepts, when you are not in alignment with yourself, feel like threats, right? They feel like threats to that safety and belonging. Not feeling, or, feeling your feelings is a threat to your safety and belonging. If you're telling yourself a story that feeling those feelings is going to be painful, or losing people that you love because you have a boundary. All of those things, it's like the scale over here and the scale over here. And until you start doing that work, and then it flips. And then you're like, oh, I see, this makes sense now. But until you understand that, you can't understand that. You really just can't. And so my work, helps women, particularly women and kids. It is really my focus. It was in my massage practice as well. And it's just where my heart is, to really be able to come home to themselves and to find that is that safety and belonging. That network comes from within. And once they can be with themselves, stay with themselves, which is the most important thing, staying with yourself. And that looks like, so for example, I was in this program last year And I was a member of the cohort, meaning I was, taking the class, but it was learning how to use your voice, learning how to speak. And now I'm teaching, right? Now I've been invited back because,
For you.
the number one thing that like I was able to experience for myself when we're on that stage, because we had to give a stage at the Opera House in front of a crowd, and everyone's freaking out, even though we've been through this program and like we're ready and we've got our stuff ready. And I'm just like, stay with yourself, right?
For
No matter
you.
what. When you get up on stage and you feel all your feelings and you forget everything you were going to say, just come back home. And you do that really simply, right? It's a hand. It's making contact. Like you can make it physical and visceral, where you put a hand on your heart and you put a hand on your belly and you just breathe and you wait until all of that energy just dissolves. And it's so simple, right? None of this is rocket science. Somatic work is just it's gestures. Embodiment work, even more rooted in like that intuitive sense of like, how does this feeling move? How can I allow it to be fully expressed by moving as it would as it's moving out, right? So it's like, I'm talking to people and I'm like, I just got this thing speaking. And it really is. It's the way we allow it to move as though it's fully expressed. So it takes some unwinding for it to even be able to feel that full expression. And so in my classes, you really see it come to life, because it's a group of people and there's that group energy where like, you got to do this, I call it the creatress arising, but it's like that movement that's coming from within that wants to be expressed but hasn't been let out before. Do that around others, right? So the invitation is to close your eyes if that feels safe, but it's like you're moving your animal self, your creature self. In order to do that, you have to be able to forget about everyone else in the room. And in order to do that, you've got to have safety and belonging in your body. And so it's this framework that like makes it clear all the steps that would be required to then watch me, and I'm free, doing this movement that people are like, oh, what is she doing? And also I want to do that, right? Like it's both. And so how do you get free enough to let go of the conditioning? And of course it comes back. Like I can go to an event and still feel like, oh, people, I like my little cocoon of people that I know are, with me. So I can still be outside of my body. And then I can take a breath, I can connect, I can make that contact. And once I begin that process over time, what I've really found is instead of the default mechanism being self-abandonment, the default mechanism is bring myself home. And then from when I bring myself home, it really doesn't matter. As long as I'm being true to myself, it really doesn't matter what situation I'm in, because I'm able to be with my authentic self. And that's what matters most to my soul. That's how I know I'm in alignment. And that is that answers every question for me. Because when I am in alignment with myself, I know I'm in right relationship with everything else, because that's how I've set it up, right? In order for me to be whole, not whole. I really believe that we are always whole and that we have just lost parts of ourselves here, not here. And so, it's not finding our wholeness, but it really is embracing that wholeness. It's welcoming all parts. It's welcoming the shadow. It's welcoming the part of you that did self-abandon. It's welcoming self-abandonment. It's really just being over and over and over an endless flow of allowing yourself to be whoever you are, whenever you are, however you are, and knowing that you can always come home and call those parts back in and welcome them and embrace them and not judge them. Not even the judge, right? So it's
right.
It's a spiral, but it also is the most, and as far as anything that I've done, it's the path. It's that coming home, because when you are there, everything else gets to happen, right? Everything else gets to happen. So
beautiful. Good job. That was awesome. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I really liked all of that with the safety and belonging, and everything you said just really resonated. And I hear that you've worked with all people, but primarily women and children. And that's been my focus for the last 30 years. And so that's just profound. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
Anything to add on that, or do you want to go on to the next question?
Well, I think primarily, so, with regards to SHEskool.
Yeah, thank you.
SHEskool started during COVID because I couldn't do my body work, right? We had a mandate, and so I couldn't touch people. And I was, panicking because everyone was, but also like I didn't know what I could do if I couldn't do what I do, and who know how long that was going to be. What could I do? What could I use? And there was such a, I always say in Michigan, I'm from Michigan, and many years ago, we were really hit hard by the recession. And after that, you saw like this uptick of people just picking themselves up by their bootstraps and creating opportunity for themselves. And so you just saw new businesses that hadn't even been conceived of, which were so simple, like a family that had been farmers forever becoming a distillery type thing, where they're, and then taking people through the farming experience as a part of what they're offering. Or someone starting a sauerkraut business, they were just like, what are we going to do with what we have? And so that was like, after the 2008 recession, we just saw this really strong in Michigan. But then it was like the same idea during COVID for some of the, the women in my community that are like me, that are doing what we do. Like, what are we going to do? Like, what do we do? And as a, I was a full-time body worker. That was my gig. I did a couple of other things within my practice, but primarily I was doing, touch. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. And my father-in-law got really sick. He was in the hospital, and we were in Grand Rapids, and there was a track outside the hospital. And every day, because you couldn't be in the hospital, only one person was allowed. And so my husband was with his dad, and I was just hanging out because what else was I going to do? And I was walking the track every day, and I literally had this epiphany, because I was like, how can I use all of this stuff, right? All those continuing education classes, so much stuff, just like crammed inside. What can I do with this? And so I had this like epiphany revelation that I could create a school for women, primarily women and girls, that I would just lead classes, workshops, maybe eventually retreats, but doing what I already do. I didn't have to learn another thing, was the idea, because of just where we were at with the world. I was like, I have enough information here to do with it. And
good for you, totally.
I'd been like pigeonholed in my bodywork practice. No matter how many times I had gone to do these other certifications, people want what they want. And so I didn't get to do all the great things that I wanted with my clients, because they were like, no, I'm good. I want this, but do tell me, about that supplement, this herb, or, I was always getting those calls. Well, so I created SHEskool, and it was like a download. Everything was very clear. And I started with using my folk herbalism, which is such a huge part of my living life, right? My kitchen and my, my health and everything herbalism is such a huge part of it. And every once in a while, I'll dabble in products that I sell, but for the most part, it's just how I live, and also how I support the people that I love. And so it started there, and then it just kept growing. It's like, well, there's so many other things that like need, right? And so SHEskool, initially it was like solidarity, healing, and empowerment for she. And then over time it became sovereignty, holiness, and wholeness with the H. And then the E is, embodiment. And so it's just continuing to evolve. And so I now do, I do classes, I do memberships, I do workshops, and some of that's in person and some of that's online.
Beautiful.
And so it just keeps growing. It's been a really beautiful experience. As you know, it's like we kind of have a lot of parallel things going on.
For sure.
So yeah, I do want to give SHEskool.
Wonderful. Yeah, I was wondering. I'm glad you shared, because I have been wondering where quote unquote it's at these days. And so just to hear, good for you.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we'll share all your tags and info to find you at the end of our interview.
Super. Thanks.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. So what was a defining moment in your life that changed the way you see yourself and the world?
So this is where like all the big energy gets, titrated down into like the very small micro is 11. It'll be 11 in October. Years ago, my son died. He was 18 and he was my only child. He was my whole world. I had him when I got pregnant when I was 19. I had him a month after I turned 20. And, he was my world. He was my person. And, he was where I found safety and belonging until I belonged to myself, truly. And he died 2 months after he turned 18, took his life. And it was, it decimated my entire life. And it took a long time to figure out what I was going to do about it. But I did have what I had going for me, I guess I would say, is the work and the life that I had built in healing. So I was immediately surrounded by the community of women that do the work I do. So they were bringing me all the things that I usually bring to others, right? The herbs, the tinctures, the massage. I had 16 hands on me at one point, right after my son died. And so I was surrounded immediately by, I really just felt like everything I had given, I was given back during that time.
So beautiful.
And beyond, right? Because people were so incredibly just helpful and generous. And so I had something to lean into. There was a very, you're straddling worlds when something like that happens. And so I had this strong pull, this strong current toward darkness and towards surrender. I remember very clearly feeling almost like I did not have anger with my son, except for having taken away this choice from me because of what it had done to my family. I knew that I could not make the same choice. Mm-hmm. Even though in that moment, I really wanted to. I really did not want to be here. I had just convinced myself his whole life, if anything ever happened, which, moms do, we're always worst case scenarioing everything. I just really believed because of our connection, I had this whole belief system that my heart would just cease to beat, right? If anything, if Isaac died, I didn't have to worry about it. It would just take care of itself. I believed that, and it didn't happen. And that was very perplexing because it's like any belief system that you truly have. I believed it wholeheartedly. And so I was stunned for a long time that I survived, and then continued to not really know if I was surviving because I wasn't really fully functioning. It took a very long time for me to just function on a human level. I couldn't do my work for about a year and a half. And even when I restarted, I had to disconnect completely from myself in order to serve my clients. And because they're family, that's almost impossible. I definitely cried tears on people's bodies. Yes. But eventually, and over time, back to that, what I was talking about with the triangle, we started a foundation in my son's name because it was not expected. There were no signs that this would be a choice Isaac would ever make. And so we were, like so many families, experiencing something that was never in our, you worry, all the things you worry about your kids. That was not something I worried about with Isaac because he was just beloved in his community and his school. And his family, he was the most loved human I've ever known when he was here. And I mean, we knew that when he was here, he was beloved. He was the center of our world. And so it was just really so perplexing. And because of that, we wanted to do something. We didn't know what, but we thought, we wanted to help someone else's Isaac. And so I started these trainings. I was going to I was going to conferences, and I was going to what would be continuing ed for social workers type things. But I was going as a lay person, and I kept coming back and being like, that's not it. I did mental health first aid. I became an instructor for QPR, which is question, persuade, and refer. And it's a way of helping people who come into contact with someone who's suicidal be able to get them to the next level of help, right? Okay. It's just empowering people to know that they can do something. Because what we found, with Isaac, and what you hear all the time, is that there are signs, there are maybe even conversations. So Isaac had a conversation with a friend. That friend didn't know what to do because, of course, they are being loyal to their friend. They think they're being loyal. And I get that. I understand that. But this is just a tool. It helps people understand like there are steps that they can take.
Okay.
One of the things that's really helpful, just because I think this is always important, if someone is ever communicating anything that sounds like they might be suicidal, is asking them directly, I need to make sure, are you feeling suicidal? And then if they say they are, then you get them help. You're not calling the cops, you're not calling even 911 necessarily, but you're helping them make that next step of getting them help. So, and those things were important, and I definitely found value in them, but I just didn't feel like they were the things that were like calling to my heart as far as our mission to help somebody help Isaac. So, I did some meditation. I was trying lots of different things. And then I stumbled upon my own healing process where I had kind of plateaued with talk therapy, but I didn't really know what was next. But I did feel like it was in my body, this grief, this sorrow, all of the things that come with suicide. And particularly, I think, the suicide of your child, we're like living. And of course, I think part of that is the background that I had. I understood that it really was living in my body. I just didn't have anyone that was able to help that.
Okay.
So a friend of mine, I did a retreat after COVID when we could all be together. And one of the women that was at my retreat recommended this book just from a conversation that we had. And it was a game changer. It was like, it opened the door to somatic work in a way. It spoke in a language that just reached out and grabbed my heart and pulled me in. It was just like, oh, and it was on the personal. It was not on the professional. And it was just like, and so once I started being able to have the experience for myself, I very quickly was like, okay, I've got a lot of work to do, but this is something. And so it answered all of those, that in that trifecta, I always say all three were kind of solved by this one thing, which was going into the body. It made the most sense for me. I'd been doing this work for so long. It was so obvious, but it hadn't been obvious. I was searching everywhere else. But to be with the body has just been, revolutionary for me and revolutionary for the work that I'm doing. But that has been number one, first and foremost, the loss of identity. You spoke about identity loss. I lost that was mama.
Yeah, for reals.
And it was, you don't really understand until you lose an identity how much you identify with something. So it was just this whole thing that was just ripped. And losing that, it was just such a rupture for me that it took a long time to be able to put those pieces back together. But then once I found the right thing, I knew that I had found the thing that, would not only help me, but was going to help me fulfill my mission. And so that is the most important aspect of this work, is the work I do with the kids. So I love what I do with the women, but I'm really, my heart goes to these kids that I get to help, and to see that it functions, it works, because when I show up with those simple tools, when I show up with just a cleansing breath, right? A calming breath. And the next week, the kids run to me and they're like, I showed my mom that breath and it worked. Do you have more? It's just like the most amazing thing.
It is.
And they're into it, because it's simplified, and because I think part of it is, just by nature, I was a boy mom. And so I always say I'm a 12-year-old boy on the inside. My soul is really a 12-year-old boy on the inside. And, and I was always, before I had my son growing up, I had a lot of boy friends, and so it's very easy for me to be around kids, but I'm not necessarily always the most appropriate adult around kids. And so when in the school function, like in the school system, I've never once thought of myself being in school, because I'm like a kid. But in these other sort of extracurricular programs that I do, I get to be a kid with them.
Yeah.
I get to be a safe adult, but I'm not like a stuffy, I'm not a teacher. I'm not bound by the same rules. And I think the kids just, it disarms them, because they are into it, and they're not resisting me. They're not resisting what I'm doing. And I think it's because I'm coming from the standpoint of like, I'm just here because I want you to live your best life. I really just want the best for you. And not that that's not what all adults are trying to do for kids, but I'm just coming from this angle of like, I just am here to help you understand how to be with yourself, and anything that I can do to help you understand that you've got the tools you need to get through anything. That's what I want to do. And so,
Thank you.
I just love what I'm doing with them, but that is the impetus is definitely like the loss of Isaac.
Thank you. Well, I just appreciated just that last part of, just because I'm about to do my Body, My Power camp next week. And yeah, just to hear that language, it's often similar to what I hold space with and the language that I use. But yeah, just reminding them that they have all the tools that they need. And I kind of voice it like, this whole week, we're going to be filling your self-care toolbox with different things. Take what works, leave what doesn't, kind of thing. But yeah, just empowering them to just believe that they have the power and that they have value and that they have worth, and just that acknowledgement, and offering them understanding for the layers and levels they're going through. I mean, I love when I get feedback of like, nobody talks to us like this. Nobody listens to us like this. I'm like, job done. Check.
Yep.
That's all we need to do.
And I just vulnerability and being vulnerable yourself. They need to see adults not have all the answers. They're going to figure it out. My niece and nephew are in their early 20s now, and they're like, we had no idea. You guys have no idea. We thought we were going to arrive at this age and we'd know everything you know. And now we know you don't know anything, But I think too that kids need to see adults not have all the answers, but have like the real earnest intention to be like, I always say to every single person I come into contact, I don't do nervous system work because it's easy. Right. I came to
I don't help regulate nervous systems because I'm regulated.
Yeah. This work is, I know that it works. Yeah. And that's why I can get behind it, because I have been in the space of not having any tools. And I feel the same. It's, you're just filling your toolbox with tools that you might be able to pull out any time. And some jobs call for, a saw, and some call, for a screwdriver, whatever you need. You've got it.
I just appreciate just that hands on body, and just take a moment. And I remember when I was first doing massage, and I was in a healing session, and, she just said that if you don't have the hour-long meditation practice that you want or whatever each morning, it's like just throughout the day, hand on heart and belly, take a breath. I got you. You're doing great. Keep rocking and go. And do that frequently. Do that more as often as you can in the day. And, it's like we obviously wash our hands before and after the sessions. And so much of that too is just like letting things go and not taking on other people's stuff or whatever. But yeah, all the tools. I mean, that's really, and that's basically what this podcast is about too, is I always hope and I trust that every conversation I have, that there's going to be tools shared and offered, and that listeners are going to be able to glean from other people's experiences. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
What does radical self-love mean to you, and how has it played a role in your journey?
Oh gosh, I love this one. I think of radical, when I think of radical self-love, I think of, it's radical because it's not common. At least my approach to it. It's like the idea that it's some of what I was saying earlier. I'm already whole. I already have everything I need. I just need to trust and rely on myself as the highest authority of myself. I am I am the only person who's ever going to completely 100% without fail be with me forever, and also look out for me and my interests. And so radical self-love to me is welcoming all parts. It's accepting the mistakes. It's accepting the parts of me that have judged the mistakes. It's a part of me that's just like, I love myself in a way that I didn't even think was possible. It's really bananas to me that the worst thing in the world had to happen.
Yes.
In order for this to happen. And I'd give it all back in a heartbeat.
Yes, totally.
Even though it's revolutionary and it's changed everything, I would give it all back if I could.
Yes, totally, love.
But I can't. And so that's the part, is like, what am I going to do with what's happened? I could fall into the pit of despair. And everyone I know would understand. Totally. But like, what am I going to do with this one precious life?
Thank you.
Is like the only thing that I can do to reconcile the devastation of losing so much, losing my beautiful child
Mm-hmm.
who even just that was everything, but also the parts of myself, like the only answer for me, like how I'm built and who I am has become to love myself and to like let other people see that love and want it for themselves. Because,
Mm-hmm.
when you lose a child to suicide, you question everything you ever said and did, do an
Mm-hmm.
inventory of every single thing. And if you cannot love yourself through that, you will lose yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
I was not a perfect parent, and I've never claimed that I was a perfect parent. I'm not a perfect human. I have made mistakes, and at the same time, like there's nothing that I've ever said or done or thought that was not worth love. And that is like the the beauty of this. I was raised, in a Christian home, and that idea was like told to us about God, even though it wasn't really demonstrated, in my opinion, in the dogma. This idea that there's this all-knowing and all-loving, unconditional love that comes from your creator. But what I really believe is we get to, the God in us gets to be that love for ourselves. And so, yeah, I can really go out there with it. But the point is that like radical self-love is just completely 100%, no matter what comes up, no matter how much challenge. It doesn't make everything, perfect and rosy. It doesn't mean I don't struggle with my thoughts, but at the end of it all is like always this idea that like, it's okay. I got you, no matter what. And that's what I gave Isaac, because that's absolutely the thing that I was the best at. It was unconditional love for him. And so, I feel so often, I really feel that connection that I have with him is like, if I love myself this way because of what has happened to me, I'm loving him. I think he'd be so proud of me.
Yeah.
And that's really all that I can hope for.
Absolutely.
Is to love as big as I wish he had loved himself.
Thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful.
It has to be radical to overcome,
It
all the
does.
stuff.
I appreciate
It
that.
has to be.
Yeah. Well, and there's a little more of a shebang under that radical part of it.
Absolutely.
A little extra. What is the most authentic version of you, and how does that align with the impact you want to make?
This changes, I think, all the time. There are times, and I think that that's like, it should be shifting, because, every time I heal something, or, I slough someone or something off from myself, like something more emerges from the depths of who I am. And so sometimes I feel, we were talking again, some of this is pre-interview stuff, but I'm a Leo. And so there's always just been a lot of big energy in me. And sometimes the most authentic me is very quiet, very small, and not the center of anything, not precious.
Yeah.
And just here, to be a conduit. And not even, just like, I just want to illuminate you to yourself. I'm not even doing the illumination. I'm just holding up the mirror, And then other times there's like the idea that I have of the impact that I could make if I really got out of my own way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure that I'm completely answering this, but I feel the most authentic version of myself is the part of me that allows myself to show up as I am in any given moment, however that looks, as long as I'm staying with myself and really just like honoring who I really am, then everything else falls into place. And so, authentic self might be speaking on stage to 1,000 people, and it might be, sitting in someone's living room and just holding their hand while they tell me their story and just listening. And so
it's powerful.
That's, I think, when I'm being my most authentic, I'm just present to what is in this moment, and this moment is constantly changing.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, my new teacher, Chrissy Firemain of the Mana Movement, she just did a podcast interview, and I've heard about this, Dr. Zach Bush, and I've heard about this report in other places, but just that he did a study. I think he had a conference or something and did a study of just what's the most potent emotion, or what's the biggest way that we can affect and change people. And so many people think that it's love. And it was actually authenticity. Like the authenticity was like 40% on the chart or whatever. And so that is just the real rawness of every expression that we're in. All these life challenges, changes, roller coasters, awesomeness, craziness, whatever. It's like to be able to come back or stay within that authentic expression of the grief and the joy and the sorrow and the excitement and all of it. It's like just to be that true human, and that just that authentic human expression really is, I feel like that's what's changing the vibration on the planet, when you can just completely show up in that way. And for me personally, that's my goal, is to raise the vibration on the planet. Yes. So the more that we can be examples of authenticity and speak truth to just our expression and our experience, I think it can just be inspiring for others, and to feel seen and acknowledged and understood, and to offer that essence of safety and belonging. That's it. Like, that's the medicine. That's the magic. That's just can spiral up and out and just really kind of, I mean, it's a higher vibration. And so it's going to kind of uplift that dark, shadowy, kind of more stagnant energy up back to the light. I mean, you can't have light without the dark. And I think, I don't know your experience prior to your transition with Isaac, but it's like, before I went through a transition and before I was peace, love, and light, and just really focused on all the positivity, because in my mind, I was like, there's plenty of negativity in the world. Like, let's just stick to the positive, and it wasn't a full expression. It wasn't being authentic, in a sense that I didn't honor the shadow, and I didn't honor the low points and the grief and the heartache and the anger and those parts that are the fullest expression of who we are. And so, unfortunately, we go through these heart-shaking, heartbreaking experiences to then put our pieces back together and just to be in that full expression. And
so true.
And it's hard. It's hard to speak about. And I'm so grateful. I mean, I obviously follow you on social media and see when you go and do your speeches and you are at these events and these conferences and you're holding hands of another mom. It's so freaking powerful and so healing. And I mean, I think you would probably agree. It's just to be seen and heard within your experience. It's kind of all we need. It's just that acknowledgement and understanding and love within whatever we're experiencing. And it's simple on some level, and it's so hard on others. Right. It's like there's the simplicity to it, but we're so in our minds and we're so stuck in the subconscious and all the trauma we've been through that it's hard to kind of help that, allow that, if you will, kind of that authentic place to come to the forefront. And so to be a example of it and to be an expression out in the world of it, and then for you to be holding space for other people is really the most beautiful gift.
Yeah.
I wish that he was still here to witness it with you, but that he's totally proud of you and honoring you, and just like, and those are these other pieces. I have other friends that have lost their kids, and it's just, I mean, you're never going to be the same human, but you have this different depth of human being in this human suit that other women and moms don't have. And just that, I mean, whatever the solidarity is within that, but I've seen other women speak about it, and it is the depth of the experience of the emotion. When you have such deep loss, then you get to experience like joy in this deepest way that you never have, and it's such a weird, I don't totally agree with how the universe is working in that, but I'm just like, dang, we have to go through these freaking really challenging experiences and situations for us to rise into these places of authenticity and sovereignty and all that. And I'm just like, why? But okay, I'm on the earth game. Let's play. But it's hard and it's rough and it's life altering. But when we can be in our bodies and ride the wave and bring a hand to the heart and belly and take a breath, that's real. That's true. That's authentic. It's not. And that's all that it has to be. It doesn't have to be these like earth-changing things. It's like, just take a breath, just hold somebody's hand and make eye contact and just like, I see you. Like, that's life-changing.
It is.
For you, for just to be able to come into your own healing and your own selfhoodship, that it's like then that you can create those containers and open, create the space and create the containers of safety and sacredness so that people can show up exactly as they are.
Yeah. And, it's funny, so much of what you said, I could have been like, yep. But the really important thing I think about it is an initiation. And it is also my husband and I refer to it as I'm an accidental genius, because I had set myself up with my life to be exactly what medicine I needed. And who would have known that? I mean, I was just a little girl from a small town who college was not my thing. And then I had a baby and nobody was doing it the way I was doing. And so then I go to massage school and then I'm an herbalist and then I'm all these things. And it's like, there's no model for me at the time. You know, this is pre-internet, obviously, or at least pre what it is now. And so I was just figuring it out, but it was like, it is. And how I'm showing up in the world is exactly the same. The way that I explain it is I had no role models, but then I became a person that somebody could see.
Right.
So they would have them. And I had no role models in grief because nobody's honest. And so the accidental genius is being who I am and being my own curious, like random self that knows there's got to be another way, even though nobody around me is doing it. I keep finding the medicine I need by being in my authentic self and not being afraid and being willing to be like, nobody else is doing this, but I'm going to tell the truth. This sucks. It still sucks. It's been almost 11 years and it's still heartbreaking.
Yes,
and
babe.
What you said about joy is so true. So if you haven't experienced it, you have certainly listened to the people in your life. And that is such a gift because you asked, the interview questions. One of your questions is, what do you wish people would ask you? And my answer is like, truly wish people would ask me to talk about the experience of realizing that there's this pendulum. And so like the deeper your grief, the pendulum, in order to balance itself, has to go in the other direction. And like my expansion for joy is commensurate. And I did not know that. And it is profound what I just did not even know. Like, I remember the first time I felt joy after Isaac died, being startled. Not just that it felt wrong because, you're like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. But also it felt beyond me. It felt so big and it kept being that way. And so it's just constant, like the more you suffer, I don't know if it's the consolation prize from the universe, but it's your capacity to experience if you stay open, right? Which is hard. It is not something that I take for granted, that I have this spirit that allows me to let myself feel the joy, because I do know moms that cannot let it in, and my heart is with them. I do not judge them and I don't shame them. And so I'm not saying, oh, you just have to choose joy. I get that for some people it isn't a choice, but my experience has been that they're not opposing. They're not opposites. They are the same arc, and it just expands. And if you get out of the way, right? If you allow yourself to really be with it, it just opens everything. And so like the depth of my sorrow is the depth of my joy. And those things are just so profound. And they are absolutely the medicine of what is possible for human experience. Because the reality is, my son dying by suicide is absolutely the worst thing, but it is not the only tragedy in my life. I have had many, many, many traumas over a lifetime. And I was not sure how I could survive this one too, or any of them after, except to just kind of, I always say that I'm dating myself when I say this, but it's like the Nestea plunge. Do you remember those commercials of Nestea? They just plunge into the pool of tea. I am like constantly like surrendering myself to like, I don't know where this is going, but I've got to surrender to this possibility of joy. I've got to trust that like I'm not bypassing and I am not distracting. I got sober. It'll be 9 years in September. And that was part of it. That's the same thing as like the accidental genius, right? I didn't realize when I quit drinking, I just didn't want to die. I didn't want to have my family worry about me. Nothing had happened, but I just knew that it was probably not helping my sorrow and my depression. Right? Like you had that wisdom, and I just one day woke up and I was like, this is not helping. But I didn't know in that moment that it would invite me to feel so much more, and also invite me to see how much I had not felt for so long. I started drinking in high school. There was just like the spiritual sort of autopsy that you do when you decide, when you affirm, I'm going to feel it, before you have any tools or any business making that choice. And then all the ways it just continues to open. It's again, like it really is just like I keep accidentally making those choices that lead me. I mean, it's not completely accidental. I don't mean to dismiss, that there's a wisdom and also just design here, but also that they just keep being sort of like, I'm like one of those things in a parking lot, like a used car.
Yeah, totally. The blow thing.
Time until now. I don't feel like the accidental genius anymore because I really have come home. But for so long I was just constantly like, oh, I'll go here, I'll go here, I'll go here, and they all just kept being the next right thing. They could have been disasters. Some of them were, certainly. But until I was able to be like, oh, the point at which I came home to myself was like landing in everything is for me. All the good and all the bad has always been for me and is by design. I used to say, I used to feel like I chose all the options in this model because I have had every experience. I have had every illness. And so many things have happened that I don't talk about it because it feels like it just feels ridiculous. It feels ridiculous if I focus on the path that I've been on. But at the same time, those are all initiations and I don't welcome them necessarily. Like sometimes I'm like, hey, I'm good. I'm good. Right. Thank you. And then other times I'm like, what else you got? But the reality is like, I am here and this is my life. And there has to be a purpose. And it is kind of funny in some ways when I think about where I come. I grew up on a dirt road in a trailer until it burned down. And then, there's just so many things that like, how did I arrive at this place, which isn't big in the in the macrocosm, but like it's so big in here because there's so much and we all contain this. And that's what I want everyone to know. I want every single person to know what's inside of them is just like boundless. And it's not me. I'm not special. I'm really not. Like, I don't think any of us are that special. I think this is just what's possible for us as human beings. And we just have to awaken it. And I've had all these initiations that have awakened it. And I want others to have that maybe with less pain. So I'll show them some tools that'll help them have access to themselves and then discover this for themselves. And then they'll pass it on, and then talk about co-regulation. We'll just all be like lighting, and that's how we'll change the world, and that's how women will rise up and do what is natural to them, which is like light each other's torches. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the last thing I'll say about that is the very thing about the, being the most authentic version of myself. It's honestly living my life in such a way that I am not asking permission, nor am I clarifying that I am dismantling the patriarchy from my body so that I am not tethered in any way, so that everyone else can see what that looks like too. I take it as a responsibility. The same way I did as a mom, right? The same way as a mom that you're like, you want to be a good role model for your kid. There are things I miss because I didn't realize, right? There are tools that I could have taught him that would have maybe saved his life, but I didn't know the things that I didn't know. And I didn't know I just didn't know. And now I'm taking that responsibility everywhere because I'm not missing an opportunity to show anybody that I come into contact with what is possible for them to be living in the truth of their selves, whatever that looks like. And whatever it means to the people who don't resonate is fine by me. Like, you don't have to, it's okay. But I'm just not letting anybody's ideas about how it should be, what grief should look like, what joy should look like, what a woman should look like, what, menopause should look, any of these things. I'm not letting other people tell me. And that's, again, goes back to that emotional outsourcing. I'm not doing it anymore. And so I want to be an example of it.
Powerhouse.
Because nobody's fucking doing it. So we got to do it. Right?
Dang, I got chills. You can see them on YouTube. Well, we're rolling. I'm like, on that note, what does my body, my power mean to you?
Well, when I was thinking about this question, it was two things. So when I think of my body, my power, of course, I think of you first and just like what it's been like. So for the listeners, I met you at a wedding of a friend when I believe I was 21 years old, maybe almost 22. I think or I just turned 22 because I believe that might have been August and my birthday's in July. But anyway, I was young. And you and your girl squad were like, just the coolest people that I had met. And I didn't have that. I had girl friends and I had friends, but I didn't have what you guys had. And I again, I had a 2-year-old at the time, or almost 2-year-old. And I didn't have moms like me, and I just didn't have like a community like that. And you guys were just sort of like, I mean, you weren't much older than me. How old are you now?
52.
Yeah. So I'm 49. So I figured you were about 4 years older than me, but it was just enough of like an age gap that I could aspire to something that looked and felt and sounded like what I wanted to, because again, I didn't really have role models where I was of what it could look like. And so you really helped, like, I've never told you this, but you guys kind of helped me see that it was okay to be exactly who I am and to go with it and to not like balk, because you guys were just so unapologetically like, you really made an impact on me. That trip was really an instrumental trip in my life development.
Yeah.
Remember it so perfectly. So yeah, I'm fangirling right now for you. But then, not only did you have this impact on me as a young woman, but then the age of social media came and I got to reconnect and just see what it looks like to be true to who you are and to not apologize for who you are. And so again, to go back to my body, my power, like I've watched you through each iteration of what you bring into the world, and you see your vision and then you go and you get it. And so for someone like me to have someone like you out in the world, just reminding me that I'm doing my thing and you're doing your thing. I'm not trying to be Kristen Rubis, but I'm certainly grateful in my life to have a torchbearer ahead of me that's always just being like, yeah, and your generosity with it is just always like, you're so welcoming and you're so like, I can ask you a question. That's how it started. I think how we reconnected was like, hey, how did you do this? Or how, what are you doing here? So that's just been really amazing. But so I think of my power as you first and foremost. But when I think of my body and my power, I do think of that sovereignty that comes when you belong to yourself, that I'm making, that I am the agent of change for myself, that I am the one who is directing my life. I am the highest authority of my choices and my well-being, and what I say is true for me. And so to be in my body and to be in my power is to just be like everything that I want for myself and what I also want for others, whether they're women or children or men too. I do love some men. Men are great.
We love all humans, but we just specialize in women and children's health.
Exactly.
You just gotta have a niche.
Yes, absolutely. And so, there's so much there, but really my body, my power is just like sovereignty, it's agency, it's belonging completely to myself, and it's everything.
Thank you. Well, our final question, what is the one message or insight you believe the world needs to hear right now, and why are you the best person to share it?
Definitely, you are the medicine and you are your own healer is the message that I want everyone to know. You don't need to find it outside of yourself. You don't need another degree or certificate. You don't need more money. You don't need anything outside of who you are to be exactly what you need for yourself. You are the medicine and no one can do it for you.
Thank you. That's it. So do you have any events or anything coming up in your area or online that you could share with our listeners?
Yes. Once a month, I host a Howl and Shake. It's a women's somatic circle. It's a hybrid of like a women's circle where we talk and we share. And then the other half is movement oriented around kind of the theme for the month. We base it around the full moon, and it's really a beautiful experience. And I'll be bringing that online as well.
Okay.
This fall. And then in September, late September, after the school year gets started for most people, I'm starting an online adventure called Mindful Mama, and it's nervous system repair and re-education that women can use for themselves, but then also pass on to their kids and their families. So that'll be available on SHEskool.com.
Okay. And is that your handle also on Instagram, is SHEskool?
Yeah, it's she_school. And school is spelled with a K because it's like, that's part of it too. Is like, we're not really a school. We're not an institution. We're just here to learn. So it's SKOOL. So
Nice.
a red word there.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's it for now. I'm writing on Substack. That's Pilgrim Highway. And I write there a lot about a lot of different things. It kind of flows with where I'm at. But there's a lot of grief work there and a lot of somatic and embodiment practice.
Okay. Oh,
there.
beautiful.
So yeah, I think that's it for now.
Wonderful. Oh my goddess, this was so amazing. I haven't connected with you for quite some time, so I just feel so honored to have this conversation. And thank you for sharing what you shared, just the cute little whatever looking up to me at the wedding or any of that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's just been sweet. And yeah, thank you for witnessing my story and my experience and just my whole journey of all of my expressions of girl empowerment. It's definitely, I've been doing this work since 2009. So it's been a long journey. So I just appreciate, and you were going to be a guest speaker online for one of our camps and we didn't get enough kiddos signed up. Like that was all, and that just was so cool. It was, I do appreciate that with just this whole transference of the online world. And just, I remember when we were in COVID with the organization, and that was our most diverse camp we had was the online, because we had kids from really all over the country and just, different diversity than what's in Thurston County and Olympia, Washington. So that was very sweet. Yes, it's just been an honor to witness you too on social media, because that's basically how I'm following you. But yeah, the howl and shake, I'm like, dang, I wish I could just fly over to Michigan real quick and do a howl and shake and come on back, because it feels like it's such a beautiful experience, even just online.
Really is.
And good job for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
You've been on such an amazing journey, and just to now hear your language from your experience. It's so powerful. It's so powerful to witness women in their power and in their sovereignty. It really is. It's the magic of the world, and it's what's going to change the planet. And it is who knows what's going to happen with patriarchy. Is it going to completely go away? Are we transforming into something else? What did we learn from the matriarchy? And, it's like, how is all of this going to be? But for us to be these empowered women on the planet and just trying to educate and inspire others to align with their own authenticity and align with that personal expression. That's really the power and the magic. And like we said earlier, unfortunately we have these life-altering experiences that either shake us or break us, or both. And it's in that rising, then that's really just kind of proves to ourselves of our resiliency and how can we keep putting one foot in front of the other and lifting up the bootstraps when we're in that place of loss or confusion or that initiation. So you just shared everything so beautifully, and it was just such a wonderful conversation. So thank you so much. Do you have any last words for our listeners?
No, just keep on keeping on. Come home to yourself. Place a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly. Close your eyes. Wherever you are, you can do that. Unless you're driving, might take it to a light or a stop sign, but you can drop in anywhere to your body and just ask her or him or they what they need from you in this moment. When you feel overwhelmed, when you feel anxious, every single time it works. It might be noisy at first. It might be really hard to hear it at first because you're not used to communicating with yourself in that way. But over time, if you keep returning over and over and over again with that devotion, your body will start to trust you and talk to you. And so keep on.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I just want to share a little thing, because you just said that. I did a camp in Sedona, so I toured with my music in 13, 14, 15, 16, and I got to do a camp with my friend Kelly Cole in Sedona. And at the end, we asked for feedback, and this 11-year-old girl, I made it into a JPEG, said, I didn't know that my body talked to me and that I could listen to it and trust it. I was like, done, shebang, my work here is done. I'm going to go back to Olympia. I was just like, wow. I totally started crying, because it was just, it was a 6-hour day camp, one thing that was it. You say the right thing at the right time, and these kids are sponges until they're 25 or forever. But it was just, that shook me, where I'm like, wow, this is powerful work that I'm doing, because that's it. It's like, if a girl knows that she can listen and trust her intuition or gut instincts, she's never going to be screwed with. She's not going to ever lose her power and go into that place of losing her sovereignty. It's like, she's going to be it and live it. And so that was just, I share that with other when I do other camps, just to remind them of just trying to teach them. I called it the inner navigation system in some of my expressions of teaching them how to guide them into their intuition and into that inner knowing, and just have that, like, yeah, what do you need, body? Because we're so much in here and so much scrolling that it's just like, come back to the heart and come back to the body and the breath.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christina of SHEskool.com. I'm super grateful to have this conversation. Thank you to our listeners. I know that you're going to enjoy this conversation, and we will see you next time. Community Power Rocks.
Thank you for joining me on this journey of empowerment and connection on the My Body, My Power podcast. If you loved today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who inspires you. Together, we're creating a ripple effect of confidence, courage, and light. Until next time, Goddess, keep shining your power.